In 3, 2, 1, go ahead, sir.
Good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners work session. It's Thursday, April 29th, 2021. It is 11 a.m. My name is Ty Mentor, Chair of the Board. We have Vice Chair Commissioner Gary Edwards, the County Manager Amir Chavez, Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell, and Commissioner Carolina Mejia joining us, as well as Denise Doty and Olivia Oudman from our budget team. The topic this morning is the Budget Amendment 1 review, a continuation of a process we started last week. The public can follow along on our YouTube channel through the live stream or through a conference line at 360-252-9020. The PIN is 1234. This session is slated for 2 hours, although the board actually will be in session on various topics for the next 5 straight hours. So I say that because I will be eating things at various times. I apologize, but we were not given a break for eating today. So, and I don't eat breakfast. So with that, we will probably try to maybe end 10 minutes early at one of these sessions so that the board will have a chance to use the restroom or get water. But I'm going to turn this over to the Assistant County Manager, Robin Campbell, and pick up where we left off last week.
Thank you, Commissioner. So this morning and into the afternoon, we will be reviewing budget requests from offices and departments and picking up where we left off last week. Before I begin to jump into the requests, I did want to share some information about sales tax revenue. I do not have an updated forecast for you at this time. Financial reports are due from offices and departments at the end of this week. So we want an opportunity to see what they are projecting in expenditures. And we will have an updated forecast for you at the time we ask that you make decisions about these on May 14th. So the sales tax, though, about 20 minutes ago, I pulled the numbers for April, and our sales tax revenue continues to come in incredibly strong. And I am sharing my screen that has 2 graphs. The bottom graph is the nominal amount of money that we received. And in April, as you know, it's a 2-month lag. So April receipts were actually money that people in the community were spending in February. They spend the money in February. The taxes collected by vendors are submitted to the Department of Revenue in March, and Department of Revenue sends that money on to local jurisdictions in April. And in April, we collected over $1.6 million. If you look at April last year, that is, I believe, this dot right here, we were down, and we are up by about 20% year-over-year change. We knew that when we compared May, June, and July that we would see significant increases because those are the months last year that were down due to COVID. But we really didn't expect this kind of growth in January, March, and April. So I believe that what we're seeing here is the same thing as we're seeing across the nation. I heard on NPR this morning that national growth is at 6.4% of, I think, GDP for the first quarter of 2021. And that is the strongest growth that America has seen in decades. It's driven mainly by retail. That's absolutely what we're seeing in Thurston County. Our retail collections are strong, and we anticipate that it will continue this way for a while at any rate. So just incredible sales tax growth. Any questions on that before we turn to the task at hand?
Yes. By any chance, do you happen to know how this same phenomena is affecting the municipalities?
Not yet, Commissioner, but we're looking into that data and we can compile that for you for May 14th.
And is there any chance I could have you hit print and print me what you just showed us there on the screen?
Absolutely can do that for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I would have had a copy for you already, but I just,
Yeah.
this is
Hot
20
off the
minutes
press.
old. 20 minutes old. So now I have to figure out how to stop sharing. I've gotten good at how to share, but I still struggle with how to end. Oh, come on. I apparently need to take a class in how to use my computer. Oh, there's the button over here. Too many screens. So sorry. So let's jump into the budget amendments. Just as a refresher, the board at the kind of the beginning of the review last week had agreed to a set of principles, if you will, to apply as you make decisions. And these don't lock you into anything, but the ones that you agreed to are items that are in response to emergencies, legislative changes from the 2021 session,
Page
fixes
11.
to,
Page 11 of the PowerPoint.
yes, exactly. Thank you, Romero.
Page 11.
Yes.
Of the
Hold that up
PowerPoint
again so I
from
can see
last
that,
week.
will you?
I'd be happy
Not-
to,
Like page 11, is that it? I don't have a page number on there.
Of the PowerPoint.
right there.
Okay, got it. Yep, thank you.
Okay, so emergencies, legislative changes from this last session, fixes to the original budget and technical corrections, grants where the revenue is equal to or greater than the expenditures, and carry forwards for projects begun in 2020. It's just a quick reminder on the underlying principles as you consider these requests. Now I'm going to bring up
Uh,
the,
Robin, could you just remind me what we decided that the fixes to the original budget and technical corrections, we talked about that, what those really were. Maybe you could help me. Could you refresh my memory on that a little bit?
sure. So fixes, our budget consists of thousands and thousands of lines of code, and we're going to miss something. And we did miss a few things, and those are things we're bringing forward and asking you to fix now so that the budget reflects your intent.
Okay.
So dollar changes up
Yep.
and down. Those are the fixes. Technical items are things like requests to buy a copy machine. We have rules, accounting rules that we have to follow, that we have to book the full value of the asset as an expenditure. We book a corresponding revenue. There's no money actually exchanging hands, and there's zero impact on fund balance, but we have to book it. It's a technical change. So those are two examples.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. So we have reviewed so far. We already looked last week. I'm looking for my list. Wow. So we've already looked at technical, we've looked at maintenance level, we looked at the to carry forward, and now today we are going to look at grants, policy level requests, and reinstatements.
Denise had no, okay.
She was gonna help me out.
Okay.
Yep. I
I
have
have a
amazing
question.
staff. Yes, sir.
I got new paper and I kept my old paper. Did anything change? Should I be working from the new, or can I just use the old ones that I kept from last week?
You
Okay.
can use either one. We did not send new paper on this, so that was the wonderful Amy making sure you had copies to work from.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so that is not to say that there have not been some minor changes to some of the numbers, and if we run across those, we will let you know what they are. There we go. Here's the grant list on the screen now, and I'm trying to make it big enough so people following along can actually see it.
What page are we gonna start with there?
So
That's
this
the title grants.
Grants,
Yep.
okay.
grants.
Is there a page number? Oh,
It is on the
It-
grants folder has 1 and 2. 1 through 3, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Page 1 of grants.
Of grants, okay, I gotta get there. I got it.
Got it? Okay.
Got it?
Yep.
All right, great. All right, starting with line 1. This is a grant that the auditor's office is receiving for election security in the amount of roughly $216,000. And I'm just going to walk through these grants really fast because if there wasn't revenue to cover the expenditure, they would not be on this list, except for a few that we booked last year, and I'll note those. So, Auditor's Election Security Grant. The auditor has received a grant for the Student Hubs program, and that is to promote voting at student centers such as universities, and we had one of those at the Evergreen State College last year that was very successful. We have money to support that coming into the county. Superior Court has additional revenue coming in for the this is the Guardian, the UGA. I apologize. I look at UGA and I think urban growth areas, and it's not. It's something with the Guardians.
I think it's Uniform Guardianship Act.
Thank you very
That's
much.
my best guess.
I believe that's right. And I also believe that the board is familiar with the unfunded mandate passed by the state of Washington. Well, we are receiving a small amount of money to implement this program from the Office of the Administrator of the Courts. The Administrator of the Courts is also passing through CARES Act money that the state received. They have approved money for the off-site courtroom lease. The interesting thing here is they will only approve 2 months at a time. They will not approve our request for the entire year. So what we've done is estimate that if they were to approve the full year, it would be this much. But we will have a proviso in this amendment that this will be restricted to the amount of money that the state actually awards us.
Hey, Robin,
Yes.
just to interject, so this is the only thing that's different from the numbers in the system today are actually different than these numbers. So the numbers you see on the report actually do reflect just the 2 months. And so Superior Court's updated it. So now the numbers are more like 480,850. So that reflects the full year.
Thank you, Denise.
Could I, one more question, please, on Superior Court on the UGA. It shows revenue of 21.5, but it doesn't show expenditure, and most of the other ones that show revenue show expenditure. What's that about?
We had already booked the expenditure in the budget. The board, at the time the original budget was adopted, the board recognized that there would be a cost to the court, and you approved expenditure authority. Well, now we have some revenue coming to provide relief.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So moving on to line 5. This is a State Farm donation to the prosecuting attorney's office. The donation, they received the donation in 2020, but were unable to use it due to the pandemic. So the cost will be incurred this year. The revenue was received last year. Line 6 is a similar type of thing. There's a small amount of revenue coming this year. They are going to use that, or it was received last year. They're going to use it this year. And this covers costs in the domestic violence programs. Line number 7 is the sheriff's law enforcement. Also an example of we received the revenue right at the end of last year, unable to use it by the time it got booked. So they are requesting authority to spend it this year. And you see these every year.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So, in these ones where the expenditure is kind of like a carryover from the previous year, has that been estimated in our ending fund balance?
No, no, but it will be.
Okay.
But again, we received the revenue already last year. So the revenue is sitting in the ending fund balance. We weren't anticipating it at the end of last year.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Moving on to line 8, here we are hitting the more normal occurrence where the money's coming this year and will be spent this year. So the sheriff is receiving a contract from the U.S. Marshal for task force. This is the drug task force over time of a little over $8,000. The Washington Traffic Safety Commission is granting the sheriff's office $6,000. This is for impaired driving and distracted driving patrol grants. And by the way, if I haven't said it already, usually when we receive a grant award, the grantors are very specific on how the money can be spent. So it's not like we could take this revenue coming in for the sheriff and use it to build roads, for example. It's got to be spent the way that the granting authority has told us to spend it. Here is $11,000 for the sheriff from Waspik, and that is to purchase equipment. Line 11 is for the interlocal drug enforcement fund. For the sheriff, it is a high intensity drug trafficking areas grant, just under $34,000. Then you've got sheriff law enforcement again, receiving a grant also for the task force to combat organized crime drug enforcement of $3,000. Then the sheriff is receiving a little less than $15,000 for the 2020 high intensity drug trafficking areas grant. This authority is coming probably because this federal agency didn't spend all their 2020 money. So thanks to COVID, we have a little more this year. Then you see the big one. Line 14 in non-departmental is where we are booking the direct local government funding from the American Rescue Plan. So we are expecting to receive $28.2 million from U.S. Treasury. We have still not received any type of guidance from U.S. Treasury. And on a WASAC call on Tuesday, the general consensus is that U.S. Treasury won't release guidance until May 10th, when they have a statutory deadline to release the money. So this is our placeholder. We are for now putting it all in general fund. This provides the board the most flexibility with this money. And should you decide to use it in other areas of the county, we can allocate it as necessary. Line 15, we're back to the amounts that we usually see in grants. CPED is receiving $9,000 as a new grant funding for the WSU extension program. Line 16, also in CPED, we are receiving a water planning for Chehalis Basin grant of $28,000, and there is no expenditure authority there.
It's salaries and they're already booked.
They're already booked. Thank you, Denise. Line 17 is in emergency management. We are receiving a $209,000 and actually we are receiving various grants, as you see in the statement of need. It adds up to $209,000, $62,000 in expenditure, and that is because it too is.
Yeah, it's already booked, and then there was a few other expenditures that they were just going to cover that we already anticipated. So
already covered. So this will improve your general fund balance. We're on line 18 now, emergency management, a $75,000 grant. And that is for hazard mitigation. And this is actually a placeholder. FEMA awards what are called pre-disaster mitigation grants. These are formula grants. But we have to apply for them and we don't know how much we'll actually receive. So we have a placeholder in so that we can use the grant when it comes. Line 19 is noxious weeds. We often receive noxious weeds grants. It is to cover expenditures that are already planned and booked in your budget. So we are receiving $15,000, a little more, that will go into the noxious weed fund. Community planning has a $5,000 award for planning for Martin Way corridor. Again, the project is already booked. And on line 21, you see an adjustment because we put in too much money for the HCP grant. And perhaps one of the budget team can say what's going on 21 and 22.
We're just adjusting, getting the balances to act what it should be. So I think it was a case where everything was booked originally and we've spent some of it, and now we're bringing it down to the level it needs to be at.
Thank you. Line 23, community planning is bringing in 87,000 for riparian restoration. And again, this is an adjustment of the budget line items. This could just as easily be on the corrections page, but it's on the grant page because it's all grant related. Line 24.
Why the $10,000 difference on expenditure?
So the reason it was different was it was started out different. And so what we did is got it adjusted so that revenues and expenditures are equal in the balances where we end up.
Okay.
So in the impact to the general fund, it all nets to zero. Yeah. Line 24, same thing.
Do you have additional questions on that?
No.
No, oh, I'm sorry.
Are we good? All right. Line 25 is, and 26 are two more of the large COVID awards. Line 25 is the grant to our public health department of a little over 7 million. It's part of the consolidated contract that comes through the state of Washington Department of Health. And line 26 is 25 million for the FEMA award to address the costs of the mass vaccinations that we're running. So just a huge increase in the revenue and expenditures in public health. And when we prepared the budget last year, not last year, but for next year, you'll see a decrease because these are one-time funds. Line 27.
I have a question about 26.
Great.
Okay, so that's an additional 25 million that came in from FEMA?
Yes.
When did that come in?
Well, it hasn't come in yet. We'll have to claim it as we spend it. But we knew that we'd be receiving FEMA money to cover the mass vaccination clinics for about a month now.
And how long is that going to be with us?
I think it's the end of September.
Yeah.
this
And has
year.
that got a deadline on it of the end of September?
Yes, you can only claim activities until the end of September 30, 2021.
Is this directly to us from FEMA, or is it coming through Commerce?
This is directly through the Department of Commerce through the state.
Pardon?
Department of Health.
Department of
This
Health.
is coming
the
through
state.
Department of Health.
It's on a reimbursable basis.
And so this would be some money that we could spend as far as in supplying that ability to do those mass vaccinations?
That is exactly how
That's
we're using
exactly
the
what it
money.
is, yeah. And that was the executive order early in the year. And that's how the FEMA money came. And a little bit difference on this is 100% reimbursable. So it's a little bit different kind of FEMA money.
Okay, I guess if we build a facility to handle this mass vaccination, that money can come out of that fund then?
No, Commissioner, we cannot build with this money. In fact, FEMA will not pay for anything that we construct that would be permanent. And they will not pay for any vaccinations delivered through what they would see as a normal method. So if I were to like go to my doctor's office and get a vaccination shot, they wouldn't pay for that, but they will pay for us operating the clinics the way we are at the fairgrounds and at Puget Sound, South Puget Sound Community College. The mobile vaccination clinics are approved. Um, it's those extraordinary temporary things that we're doing to get the vaccine into arms that they
Okay,
will pay for.
we're using employees to do that a lot, a lot of employees. So is this going to affect our ending fund balance that would normally have been expended out of tax dollars? So we're going to have a substantial bump in ending fund balance then because of this?
I wouldn't say it would be substantial, and this money is running through the Public Health Fund, Fund 1500, not the general fund. However, we are tracking the costs of any county employee who volunteers at one of the clinics, because we have to pay their time as their employer. And we will bill those costs to this grant. So we could see a decrease in general fund costs to the extent that we're able to bill it to this grant.
I don't know about my seatmates, but I don't know as I was aware of this. And I'm not being critical. I just want to know a little more about this process and how this is going to affect our overall budget. So I'm kind of looking for a little more time to be spent. This is a sizable amount of money. So I see Commissioner Mejia has her hand up.
So for me, I mean, what I'm getting from this is basically what we're spending, we're submitting refund receipts to FEMA, and that's what we're getting back.
That's exactly right.
So it's not that we're going to have a sizable amount. I mean, we're just basically getting refunded for the money that we're already spending.
That's correct. Money that we would spend whether we were getting reimbursed or not.
Okay.
But what this is going to boil down to is our ending fund balance could be substantially different. And that's kind of where I want to get a sense of where we're at on that.
So the ending fund balance in the public health fund could be substantially different, but it's not going to be substantially different in the general fund.
Well, when you talk about overtime and that we might not have budgeted for on the overtime, but some of that where we have personnel, I don't know, officers directing traffic or other things that are going on, it's going to add up to making a difference, I would hope.
So far to date, the total amount that I'm aware of, and this is not just for the VAX clinic, so it wouldn't necessarily be covered by the 25 million. But the total amount to date is around, I want to say $220,000. And that is for all funds. So outside of public health is having the vast majority of the expenses. So the public health fund could be significantly impacted either up or down, but the general fund is not going to see a big change because of this particular cost.
But this is all having to do with COVID, right? It has to have a connection with COVID.
It's all COVID.
Yeah, and so I'm wondering, I mean, is there money here that we might be able to earmark for treatment, for an example of?
No, it's just mass vaccination.
Commissioner, vaccinations only.
Yeah. Those specifically.
I don't see how we're going to spend $25 million.
No, that's a ceiling. That's the maximum. The county could ask for reimbursement. And,
Which
go ahead.
I believe that Shelley had reported that we were spending like $1 million a month.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Robin, but because I mean, I kind of see what Commissioner Edwards is getting at, and to a point. I mean, to the extent we're using our employees to do things, it's overlapping with, money we would have spent. But that could potentially, but then the flip side is that all the time they're spending doing that, they're not doing what we're actually paying them to be doing. And therefore, we may have additional money in the public health fund or whatever, but then that money really needs to pay for the county work that those employees would have been doing if they weren't working at mass vaccination clinics every day.
That's true.
Is that kind of a way to think about it, I guess?
Yes, that is one.
I mean,
one
versus
way.
as a bonanza of like just money that, it's like, well, yeah, there's money there, but we also had work that didn't get done.
Right.
Because we were working on vaccination to the extent there's overlap. And then there's the things I think Commissioner Mejia was thinking about, which are additional expenditures we would have never made. And those are obviously just reimbursed. That's straightforward. But I think Commissioner Edwards is focusing on the overlap, which, is going to be there. I think we saw that last year, but there's a component of that where, it's not just for anything. It really should be geared toward the activities that didn't get accomplished.
That's correct. I would also say that this 25,000 is nothing like.
25 million.
million.
Well, yeah, 25,000. It's a lot of money.
It's just, what is a couple of zeros on all this, right?
Exactly. Here's the zeros that I've been missing since I left state service. So this 25 million is nothing like the 26 million that we're receiving from the American Rescue Plan. It's not like that at all. The board has, I'm sorry to say this, but the board has no discretion over how this money is used. This 25 million, as Romero said, is a cap. It's a maximum, and it must be used to provide mass vaccination opportunities as authorized by the regional team that public health has provided us.
And we will make every single attempt to make sure that we ask for reimbursement in all the qualifiable activities. So we will make every single attempt to maximize this revenue. And also, Commissioner was asked a good question, but that question may be answered later in the year because the expenditures continue to incur and the mass vaccination clinics continue to be serving the public. So in the fall is when we have really a true impact of what Commissioner Edwards is looking for. What the impacts are on the different funds. Only then we'll know the true expenditures of this and the reimbursables.
Well, yeah, I mean, we might have money left over. The health department thinks that this toxic algae is a big health problem. And I could see a connection here if we have funds left over because we're expending these funds, that we could possibly utilize our overage to help us in other areas of water quality or maybe mental health treatment or drug treatment of some kind to help with our homeless problem. Because I see quite an area that we don't cover adequately. And I'll use the lakes as one issue, and addiction and mental health is another issue. That we're trying to solve some long-range problems, and we might have a little seed money here left. I'd just like to know more about that as time goes on.
Right, absolutely. That would be perfect for your conversations on the 22-23 biennial budget.
Exactly.
So then at that point, you will have an idea how much money is on those funds, so you can make those decisions for next year.
Okay, I mean, this is just this is new to me, so I didn't know we had this ceiling available to us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Line 27. Yes, grants are rarely this exciting, by the way, Commissioner Mejia.
And rarely we have so many zeros on those grants.
Truly. So line 27 is again one of our much more normal type of grant receipts, and that is an environmental health, 315,000 for water quality from the Department of Health. Also in environmental health, $67,000 as a placeholder for a grant that we believe will come in July from the Department of Health for water quality. Here's another one of the big public health COVID related grants. Here's $5 million because we are anticipating that the Department of Health, the Washington State Department of Health, will be receiving appropriation in the state budget to pass through to local health jurisdictions additional money to combat COVID. So we have a $5 million placeholder here that will only be spent if the revenue comes. Here is $2 million for quarantine and isolation in non-congregate care. This is funds coming to public health from emergency management. That is the state emergency management, not the local. I'm going to ask the team why there's no revenue attached to this.
I was told when I asked that it would actually get passed through our emergency management department. And so really it should have been added in this change request if we do receive it. So this is still a placeholder. That $2 million is an estimate. We should go back in and add the revenue, but it would actually be emergency services or management in our county. And then they would reimburse Department of Health. Kind of an interesting scenario.
Okay, so we're going to look a little more closely at this one. As you can tell, the budget team has not had these requests for very long, so we appreciate having a little more time to work through them, but there will be revenue to support this million and we will book it.
Oh, okay, would it tend to reflect the line item right above there, then the 5 million?
No. No, that's a different.
Well, I know it's different, but I mean, it's got 5 million on revenue and expenditure.
Right.
And so would there, in other words, are we hearing there's going to be a revenue enhancement of 2 million in the column to balance out that expenditure of 2 million?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are, Commissioner.
Okay.
If there's no revenue, there won't be an expenditure. We will book both.
Well, then, I mean, the reason I'm asking that question, because at the bottom of this thing, when we get to the end, we're going to have a finished amount, you know, in a column.
Yep.
And something's going to be out of whack there.
Yes, there's
is already,
2 million missing in revenue.
You're just trying to make me nervous or what? Okay.
We had days to prepare these reports.
Okay.
And so many requests. So line 31, moving on, if you're ready. And again, on line 30, we will be adding the 2 million in revenue. Line 31 is funding coming in from the Treasury for emergency rental assistance. We're already using it, but we need the board's authority so that we don't exceed our appropriation in public health for this emergency rental assistance.
Okay, I have a question on that.
Yep.
Okay, so that is different than the money we're giving to Thurston Strong now out of the original 28 million?
Yes.
Yeah, this is to the Community Action Council for rental and utility assistance.
Yes.
Thurston Strong does not provide rental and utility assistance.
So this is the complexity of the funding for COVID. We have the money that we're receiving directly, the 28 or 26 million, 52 million over the next 2 years. That is not the only game in town. We're seeing approximately 20 different major revenue streams coming into the county. And every one is different and unique, and
Is
it's
there any
going to add
chance,
up.
is there any chance that we could have a briefing on those specific amounts coming in? So we have
Absolutely.
some understanding about total?
Yes, Commissioner, I would be happy to put together a briefing and give you information on that.
Okay.
All right, so we'll note that and get it on the calendar. The next item is also COVID related, 1.5 million from HUD, again to be used in housing. This is the enhanced CDBG. Line 33 also related to COVID, 1.7 million coming through the State Department of Commerce. And it's a share that they are passing through the money that they receive from HUD for community support. Line 34.
Robin, I heard this
Yeah.
morning that there's an opportunity to apply for additional CDBG money for 340,000. So that
So
might be
we'll need to adjust and add that in.
right.
Thank you, Romero. Yeah, it's a kaleidoscope on the COVID front. Line 34 is for the shelter program grant. That is to use money for shelter programs, and I can't see. Oh, it's also from the Department of Commerce, 900,000. Line 35 is another stream of funding for rental assistance tied to COVID of $10.2 million. And finally, in the grant list on line 36, an emergency solutions grant from the Department of Commerce. The total award so far is 3.9 million. And we need to increase the amount that we already budgeted by this 813,000. So lots and lots of COVID money that we'll see this year, possibly next year. And there's more to come on that front.
Is there any chance that as we're trying to keep track of all this, that at least in the title, it could, put, I don't know, COVID-19 or something like that, so we had some connection. Just for an example, the Treasury Emergency Rental Assistance Indirect Fund via Commerce, that is probably there because of COVID, is that right?
Yes, and you see that in the statement of need. In the notes, it says COVID-19.
Yep.
In the description.
But all of them don't say COVID-19. That's the reason I'm asking that question.
Not all are COVID. We tried to note that, but we'll go through, Commissioner, and we will make sure it's noted where it applies.
Or at least a yellow dot or something to help us. That adds up. I mean, we've just, I'm not even going to attempt at coming up with a figure, but there's a lot of money coming in.
I have provided you, I believe that we're going to see in the neighborhood of $100 million coming through the county in COVID response.
I would just point out that Commissioner Edwards' request for a briefing would dovetail with the City of Lacey's request for the board to scrutinize all these different funding streams before we made any concrete decisions on our flexible funding, for the purpose of maximizing the ability to build more housing. That would be one potential purpose that Lacey's promoting, but I think that's kind of their concept, is making sure we don't lock decisions in until we have a full and complete understanding of all the streams and how they might meet the needs that were outlined in our initial allocation proposal. So
Yes,
again,
sir. Yes, sir.
All right, anything else on grants before we move to the next packet? Lots and lots of grant money coming in. Miss this, I'm pulling up the next set, which is capital policy requests. Did that come up? Big, I'm gonna share my screen. We're almost an hour in, Commissioner. Did you want to contemplate a short break or keep going?
how is the board okay to keep going through this session, or?
This next one's very short.
I think we can get through the capital policy one and then go into the policy. Capital
right.
policy doesn't look very long, but I'm not sure if.
Let's just keep going. I was thinking between the various sessions we have, not necessarily breaking in the middle of this.
Okay, great. All right, so next up, capital policy. The things on this list are mainly projects that are going to cost more for a variety of reasons. The first one is central services. This is the funding for the family and juvenile court camera control project. There was funding last year that we failed to roll into the budget for this year. So this would be an additional $75,000 coming out of the building reserve fund. It was planned, the project was planned, we failed to roll the money into the current year. Line number 2 is from Public Works. This is an increase for capital project where we have received funding from the Department of Ecology, and they are going to receive $580,000 in revenue, and the expenditure increase over the current cost of the project is $55,000. Line number 3 is,
Wait just a second there. Can I ask a question on that?
yes,
So that is going to show up as about $500,000 in ending fund balance?
yes, in the Storm and Surface Water Capital Fund. It will cover costs that we already booked.
Okay, but the projects have already been booked out and this is going to cover the cost of it at some point?
Part of the cost, yes, Commissioner.
Part of the cost, or is that the 55,000, or where's that $500,000 going?
The total project budget is $903,000.
Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Okay, all right. For the line 3, we have an additional request for funding for the Marvin Road upgrade phase 1, excuse me, capital project. And you see in the description that this will fully fund the right-of-way phase. And we're seeing a lot of inflation in the cost of delivering your capital projects. Land is costing more, materials are costing more. 30% is what we're seeing so far this year. And so this project is, or rather Public Works is requesting an increase in appropriation authority for this project of $600,000. There is an additional, they will pay for $200,000 of that with transportation impact fees. and the rest will come from the road fund.
Is that, and does that join up with the city of Lacey anywhere there?
Yeah. This one, Marvin
Yeah.
Road? No, no. The joint project is on Mullen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, going on. So what you see on line 4 is this 200,000 that is transferred from the transportation impact fee fund to the road construction fund to pay for this project. So 3 and 4 are linked. Line number.
But aren't we still missing some money on that? Some, where's that 400,000 coming
The
from?
road
It
fund.
will come from the road fund,
Okay.
unless they're able to secure additional grants, but the plan right now is to pay from the road fund. Line number 5 is the project for the Vail Road Southeast improvement. It is currently in phase 2, which is from 138th Avenue Southeast to 153rd Avenue Southeast. Again, the increase is due to significant cost increase in construction. The original construction estimate was made in 2016, so 5 years ago, and costs have gone up since then. And the total project cost is 2.8 million. So they are requesting an additional 300,000 from the road fund to continue this project. Finally, on line 6 is the additional cost of the ADA improvement program. The project, there are 2 projects, one at Kinwood and Martin Way, and one at Martin Way and Neal Street. These are for traffic mitigation, and the increase is 126,000, which again will come from the road fund.
Is that in Lacey?
Yeah, I believe both of those are,
So I'm kind of
they're all
curious.
unincorporated. They're all in the unincorporated
Yeah,
area.
in the UGA, yeah.
It's, okay, no, none of that is, I thought that was Lacey now.
No, I think they're proposing to annex, but there's in the UGA, Lacey UGA.
Okay, if they did annex that, do we get our 126K back? Or if we postpone it for a week, do we let them do it?
I don't know when they're planning to annex this area, Commissioner.
Well, I mean, something's going on there that I hate to spend our money if we don't have to. I'm not saying, you know, they're just a little more flush than we are usually, that's all.
Well, these projects are the benefit to the public.
Sure,
So, and this is related to ADA improvements. So,
but who's got the purse to pay for it, I guess, easiest, that's all.
well, it's still in the unincorporated areas of the county
Yeah, I wonder
for
about
now.
These are not areas that are identified in the annexation, to my knowledge.
I think it's one I think is one, I think is perhaps included on the one of their proposals.
Okay, that we've already been presented.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
An annexation proposal that we've been presented with?
No,
already?
no, this is not.
And isn't it the case, I thought that the annexation agreement that we have and are talking about updating, but I thought it provided that when we make, like within a certain window of time, I don't know what it is, 5 years or something, if we've made major upgrades, then there's some transfer of resources between that's a negotiated point. like what Commissioner, to capture what Commissioner Edwards is concerned about. We spend $5 million on an upgrade and then the next year they annex it. I thought there was a window, we sort of agreed upon a recognized window where there'd be a sliding scale of reimbursement or cost coverage back if the municipality was going to annex something that had been recently upgraded. Is that not true?
Well, what I think you might be recalling is the new legislation that allows for a new local agreement on those annexations. They will really put us in the position to negotiate any type of improvements that we didn't get reimbursement, not just on improvements, but also in any potential sales tax. Is that what you may recall, Commissioner?
I thought there was even though it's not legally mandated, I thought that there was a history of cooperation that involved that type of negotiation that predated this recent legislation, that going back 10 years or something like that. Maybe I'm wrong, or maybe that was just the aspiration for us to do that. I know I've had discussions with members of Lacey about that kind of approach. And I thought that was an approach that we tried to take so that the county didn't have to basically engage in this speculation that Commissioner Edwards is talking about, where we're like, well, gee, do we actually want to do something that helps the community if we're going to get stuck with the bill for it? I mean, we shouldn't be thinking that way, basically. We should be doing the things that are right for the community without having to worry about the tussle between the jurisdictions over funding. And so I thought there was an approach lined up to kind of mitigate that problem. Sounds like there isn't.
No, that I'm aware of, sir.
Okay.
All right.
Something for our upcoming annexation agreement discussions with Lacey.
All right. Ready to move into operating policy? Ready or not, here we go. So we're going to start. This is the one titled policy at the top. And on line 1, we have a request from the assessor. In the 2021 budget, the board approved one new FTE for the assessor's office. The assessor is now asking for the software license costs for this new employee to have access to software that they need to do their job.
And Robin, can I say, that's one time, but then within it, there's $1,219 that would carry forward into their budget every year.
Thank you, Olivia. So about 5,000 of it would not carry into future years.
Robin, is the suggestion that this was an oversight from when we approved the FTE, or how does this fit in within our parameters?
Well, we could see this as an oversight that from when the board approved the position, that could fit into an amendment, that it would be affixed to the original budget. But usually we try to work with offices and departments to get things like equipment in the budget at the time FTEs are requested. And I'd have to look back to see if we did that.
I know that I helped Nicole set up that change, the original request for the FTE, and we did build in like the basics, like a computer, that kind of thing. So we at least got part of it in there.
This could be specialized equipment that they didn't think to ask for.
Yeah.
This is a licensing issue, isn't it?
It is. It would purchase the software, the license for the software, and then the ongoing annual license.
Is that common that we're doing software licensing per FTE rather than For a group activity?
It depends on what the software is, Commissioner. Some of our software, like Microsoft products, are countywide, and we just pay in one bulk for everybody. And some things like, well, I don't know, Adobe Professional, any person that needs it gets the software, and it's by person. So it's not unusual to see something for a person.
I
Okay.
know that every time that we consider, for example, a new FTE for the sheriff, we say, okay, well, it's going to cost $100,000 to pay that employee, but it's actually $250,000 because they need a car and a vest and a gun and all this stuff. So
Right.
it seems like what's needed for the employee to do their job really should have been part of the original request.
It should have been. Yes.
We should have budgeted for that.
And again, we build in, we work with the offices and departments when we see FTE requests. We built some things in for the assessor, but apparently we missed this. The collective we, not we, the budget team.
Okay.
So that's line one. I could see the board approving this under the fixes, but it's something we should have thought about. Line number 2 is the assessor is requesting $15,000 to increase his budget for extra help. In the original budget, he had asked for 1.5 FTEs. The board only approved 1 FTE. He is saying he still needs staff and is asking for this money instead of a half of an FTE. On line number 3, the assessor is requesting $7,000 to support the pictometry technology. You may recall, Commissioner Spencer and Edwards, that you approved using COVID funds a new technology for doing the pictometry for the county, and this is additional cost related to that.
It protects staff, I think, from going out in person on some issues.
It does support that. Yes, it does. So I would say that this could have been anticipated in the original budget request. Line number 4 is $20,000. We are collecting more, this is in the commissioner's office, from the PEG fund. We are collecting more in PEG money through the franchise fees than we had anticipated, and we are obligated to pass that through to Thurston Community Television. So really we should be increasing the revenue with this. There should be a corresponding revenue increase, and it's a pass-through. So it is a technical item.
So it's still a bit of a mistake then, right? I mean, we should show revenue there.
Yeah, there should be revenue. We're collecting more than we thought we would.
Okay.
Line number 5 is $7 million in REIT. This is the tenant improvements at the atrium building that we have been talking about on Pacific Avenue. And this is the change that you will also see reflected in the capital facilities plan that we bring forth along with this budget amendment. Line number 6 is also a change in the capital facilities plan, also from REIT, 5.6 million to purchase the Mottman complex.
Robin, I do have one question on that. On 5, that is the improvements that we're dedicating to, I don't know, is it a done deal on that atrium move? Then, is that what I'm seeing, that it, I mean, I never saw an official vote, I saw direction is all, so that's why I'm asking that question.
I thought it was an official vote to move forward on that plan,
Okay,
and we're moving forward.
yep, well, I know we're moving forward. I thought it was a direction. Oftentimes we hear about, we gave direction versus we took an official vote. I thought there would be an official vote coming up on that issue, but.
So we are working on a letter of intent that we will bring to the board.
And that time we'll be able to express our position, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I will bring that as an AIS.
Okay, thank you.
I think we all expressed our positions many times over. I'm not sure what the difference is in what Commissioner Edwards is talking about.
I couldn't hear Commissioner Menser.
I just said that I wasn't sure what Commissioner Edwards was talking about expressing opinion. We've expressed our opinions many, many times over as we've gone through the various pieces. So I'm not sure what he's looking for in terms of an opportunity to express an opinion.
Well, no, that sounds like the letter is fine. I was just wondering if there was going to be a vote at a regular commission meeting that was going to discuss that, where we could express our individual positions, that's all.
You know, and that is a good point, Commissioner, because there will be a formal vote related to the letter of intent. And if the board approves a letter of intent, and we're going to be asking to delegate that to the county manager, but then there will be another formal vote when you approve the lease.
Okay.
Later in the year.
Thank you.
So yes.
All right, moving on. Line number 7 is linked to line 6. 6 moves the money from REIT to the Central Services Reserve, which is where the actual payment will go out for Mottman. Line number 8 is a request from the clerk for 3.5 FTEs in response to the new judicial officer. This was an item in the original budget that the board did not approve. Line number 9.
Well, hold on.
Yep.
Okay.
Just to clarify that, I think part of the rationale was we didn't have the judge yet. And now there's been a legislative change to approve the judge. So I'm not sitting, and the clerk has made it clear to me that if we're intending to add that judge, she needs to have her staff recruited, hired, and trained prior to that judge taking office in order to be effective. So it's something that would, if the board wanted to fund it, it could fit within the legislative change on the
You could.
1167 House bill that passed.
Yes, you could. And I'm going to just check in with budget staff. Is the 175,000 only for part of the year?
It has the positions beginning July 1.
July 1, thank you. So future cost will be about double this, roughly. Okay, anything else on the request from the clerk?
Could I add one thing, Robin?
Yes.
that also the change request indicates that they would need additional space. So there's a piece that's not in there.
Well, hold on. I just talked to the clerk yesterday, and she said that the space that they have at Chandler Court um, would be adequate to,
Okay.
they'd be able to manage that until our larger space plan goes into effect through the space that's available at Chandler Court. So I don't think we have to address that through budget.
Can you hear that?
It's hard to hear him.
I couldn't make that out, but Chair, could you say that again?
Yes, I don't know what's wrong with my microphone today. So in speaking with the clerk yesterday, she mentioned that she feels she can accommodate the space needs of these new employees with the space that's available at Chandler Court until our larger space plan is able to be executed. So I don't think there'll be additional expenditure requested for space based on the conversation I had yesterday.
All that clerk activity that we're tying in with the court, won't that tie in with COVID expense money? Because it's directly related to COVID is why we're doing that.
It would be difficult to charge 3 positions that are necessary because we added a judicial officer that the court has been saying we need for years. It would be very difficult for us to show that as necessary in response to COVID.
Well, the portion of off-campus, though, I would think that, I mean, a portion of it should be, because we're doing things differently.
We are able to cover the lease cost through COVID money. All the costs of having the offsite courtroom are being covered with COVID.
Wouldn't some of this be part of that off-site cost of the courtroom? I mean, you've got different security issues, a lot of different issues that I think are directly related to COVID. I'm not saying the whole amount is, but something is.
Right. So we are paying for the cost of the security officers at the court with COVID money. We're paying for the additional corrections staff with COVID money that are necessary to transport the in custody defendants to the court at the offsite courtroom. But the rest of our costs of the proceedings are not COVID related, and this particular 175,000, I doubt that we could align to COVID.
Well, I really do think it's worth looking at because we're there strictly because of COVID and everything that takes place because of that. Because we're there, that all has to do with COVID. So I would hope that we'd be able to at least get something out of there, anything having to do with a change of normal operations that had to do with COVID, that's all. Just try and look at it, I guess. That's my suggestion.
We'd be happy to look, Commissioner, we'll check it out. So line 9 is the IT cost tied to these 3 positions. Moving down to line 10, also a request from the clerk regarding the Blake decision. She is asking for staff, and I don't have a lot of details on this yet. So I think that the board providing funds in response to the Blake decision is something that you're absolutely going to need to do. And I would suggest to you that not only the costs of the clerk's office, but we're also experiencing costs, as you know, in the courts, the prosecutor, the public defense, and in pretrial services, all related to Blake. And what I would propose to you is that budget staff work with these offices to get an estimate of the total need. We also know that the state of Washington has appropriated some money for Blake. And so we need an opportunity to see approximately how much we might receive from the state and bring you a package specifically on Blake.
That sounds good to me.
Yep, thank you.
All right, so then we move to line 12. Line 12 is a request from the sheriff for law enforcement overtime. As you see, the sheriff is requesting this funding because they are anticipating costs in excess of their overtime line item in their budget. And we had reduced those costs. The board approved some overtime funding last year. It did not all carry forward. They are asking that you add money to their budget again this year.
Does any of that have to do with COVID?
If it does, Commissioner, we're covering it with COVID expenses, and we would treat it the way we did last year, where at the time we increased the COVID revenue, we also increased the sheriff's budget. If you're wanting to cover COVID overtime costs, we should do it separate from this particular process.
I see that they do have for 2020, $370,000.
Yes, we did incur quite a
Dedicated.
bit. Yep, we incurred money last year from COVID and we covered that.
But we don't have any revenue showing
No.
on that.
No, they're not claiming that the expenses in 2021 would be COVID related overtime.
I just wonder if they've missed well, they don't know yet on 2021 probably until they get done with it. I think it's something worth looking at because we don't have any revenue on that side.
Robin, what is this is an request to increase, there is an amount set for overtime, right? It's not what the sheriff has asked for, but can you remind me of what is allotted?
So maybe that's something that one of the budget team can pull up. It looks like Denise is looking for it.
So I think that there are like 4 different orgs here. A second, sorry, it takes just a minute to get there. Investigate. I'm going to give you, so there are 4 different organizational structure buckets. I can give you really quickly the line for Sheriff Patrol. They've got 283,000 for Sheriff Patrol, and I could easily get that to you and just right after this if you want it by email for all of the orgs.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, and then comparing, like when they say in their line item here, overtime expenditures excluding grants have been as follows. So I want to make sure I'm comparing apples to apples, you know, in terms of
Right.
we budgeted them. Let's just say 283 was the total, for example, of all the groups, and they're combining. I want to make sure what they're combining there are the same numbers that you're going to give, so I can sort of compare. And then they're saying that there's $126,000 shortfall. I just need to, and we added, we added positions. I remember we had a long debate last year about, well, we didn't carry forward an overtime expenditure because we added a bunch of positions in an effort to try to reduce overtime. So I need to see that that's kind of diminishing in response, or there's an explanation for why it's not diminishing, et cetera. So I think there's just more numbers that I'm going to need to evaluate.
So Commissioner Menser, I'll be happy. You know what I'll do is I will reach out to Heidi to make sure that we are looking at apples to apples, because some of their contracts are funded completely out of overtime and have revenue attached. So we'll make sure we have the right number.
Like, for example, I know one of the debates on the Rochester SRO, I believe, was because that was being funded totally out of overtime. And so we basically made that a regular position to save the school district money and to reduce that overtime budget overage. So, I mean, that should be reflected in what we're seeing, or else, and stuff like that. I mean, in my opinion, we've made multiple steps to try to help close this gap. So I want to make sure that we're tracking all that. Thank you. I'm sure Heidi will be able to do that for us.
Moving on to line item number 13. Hard for me to get some of these things to show up on my screen, just because of the way Excel works. So line 13 is the funding, the purchase of 7 of the wrap safety restraints. This is, darn it. Here we go. So this is equipment for the board had approved in October of 2020 the purchase of 8 of these restraints, and the sheriff is now asking for an additional 7.
I do remember the kind of them laying out a plan to acquire them in phases. Is this consistent with that? What I'm reading here, is that accurate?
So if it is consistent with their plan, with all respect, why wasn't it added to their budget requests?
I think, if I remember right, at the time we made that decision, this is all about preventing a situation like happened in Minnesota, I think, this type of equipment. And I think we agreed that it would be incrementally acquired. I don't remember exactly how that was laid out or anything, though.
I agree, Commissioner, that I believe the sheriff did present a plan for purchasing X number of them in each year, but again, with all due respect, why didn't they include this in their budget requests if that was their plan?
Well, I don't know why they did or why they didn't, but I think we agreed to it, and I think we would look somewhat foolish if we did not go ahead with that acquisition.
All right, $10,000 for the sheriff, and nothing is preventing the sheriff from purchasing these. Line number 14, the sheriff is requesting $145,000 for retirement leave buyouts. So you heard this morning the proposal from staff on establishing a leave buyout pool, but we are proposing to you that you establish that pool beginning in 2022, since this is a policy decision. The sheriff does expect to have retirements this year. and that will incur a significant cost. So he is asking that you provide funding for the buyouts. But I would once again say that other offices and departments are also experiencing retirements. And I would suggest to you that if you're going to consider leave buyouts, that we should do it on a county-wide basis.
Robin, when do you intend, if we agree to that, when do you intend to have that program in place?
Next year,
Next year,
Commissioner.
okay.
Next year, not this year.
So just fleshing out that thought, if we were to say that we wanted to then address this on a countywide basis, when would we have to make that decision so that basically that information could be put out to all the departments and offices and have them submit their projected retirements?
We would want to do that pretty darn quick. Given the schedule that we have for adopting the budget, if the board would like to contemplate providing funding for a leave buyout this year, we could do a couple of different things. One thing we could do is reach out to offices and departments and ask them if they have an idea of how many might retire this year. Or we could take the information that we've already compiled for the proposal for next year and estimate, if we did leave buyouts in the last 6 months of this year at 50% of retirements only, we could come up with an estimate of what that would cost. So staff could prepare something like that if the board would like to contemplate that.
Yeah, I don't know where my seatmates are. I don't think I'm going to be comfortable doing this piecemeal, inconsistent between the groups. So I would, if I'm going to support this, it's going to have to be on that countywide basis that you described, Robin. I can't really say whether I support it because we haven't even gotten through what's on page 4 of the policy request, and I want to hear the details on each of them and kind of understand the magnitude. But I guess that's where I'm at on that particular issue.
So we can prepare a rough estimate for when you meet again of what a countywide impact might be.
Type up, commissioners, if that doesn't sound right to you or you have a different proposal.
Yes, sir. That sounds good to me.
So moving on to the next item, line 15 is a request from the Sheriff Corrections for an increase of $73,000 to increase the contract with the Yakima County Department of Corrections for contract beds for our inmates. So our contract is for an average of 8 inmates per day. We only pay when we have someone in contract housing, and it should be noted that there have been no inmates in contract housing since October of 2019. Line numbers, yes?
Well, I'm reading this note and I see something in here that says we don't, the rate should probably reflect the right rate, but at the same time, do we need to allocate more budget authority when there's no utilization of this? What happens to the money? What's happened to the money that we allocated for the last year?
They have used it for other things, or it has been part of the reversion.
So maybe we change the rate and dial it back to 2 inmates a day or something. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. There's something doesn't quite square for me with that.
I would not recommend funding this line item. That it's not money that they need. Moving on to line 16 is the leave buyout request for corrections. Then we have line 17, also from corrections. This one I would say fits under the emergency category. It is the purchase of a body scanner for the jail. We could use COVID money to pay for this. And it purchases a scanner that would reduce the amount of physical contact between sheriff's staff and people coming into the jail. So we could easily find a way to say that this is an authorized expense of COVID funding. Line number 18 is for the coroner. The coroner is requesting an FTE, and what they are asking is they are taking a policy, they're changing the way that they do business, and are asking for a forensic autopsy and morgue operation technician.
You know, this is going to be a new ongoing FTE position, but initially this is brought about by COVID. And so initially I think we ought to be able to pay for it out of the COVID money until that runs out. Well, they weren't able to get people in there to do this, and that's what the coroner's, that's what he told me, that there's a direct correlation between this and the pandemic. Now, is that going to be ongoing? We don't know 3 years down the road, but I think for now it is. It ties in.
So we can certainly look and see if it's actually related to COVID. I understand that the person that he has contracted with long-term was a high-risk individual and had to self-isolate. But the work that is being done is not necessarily COVID related.
No, but the work that didn't get done is necessarily COVID related. And the way this was explained to me, that if we don't have this expenditure, we're going to have more expenditures on the other end because the work still needs to be done. It just needs to be farmed out. So in the end, I think this, I don't know, I'm not going to say it pays for itself, but in the end, there is a benefit here. And I do think there is some COVID connection. That's all I'll say about that, because I don't know to what extent.
We could certainly explore more if there is actually a COVID connection.
Yeah, the thing with this is that I understand that the new position isn't a direct replacement of the old, but the old, like, there is no ability. It's kind of like something that's grandfathered in, so to speak, or something like that. It's like the old position and the person that was filling that need, there is no way to directly replace what was lost. So something was lost, and in order to fill the gap, this other kind of employee is needed. So it looks a little odd because it's not apples to apples, but it really is the only way, from what I understood from the coroner's explanation, it's the only way to go about filling this gap that was created, and it is a critical gap. So I'm not sure what the option is for the board under these circumstances. I wasn't thinking so much about COVID money as just this sort of the budget basis, you know, this being a budget amendment type of item is a COVID connection to that, because that's why we lost the person we lost.
So if there is no way to continue to contract for these services, then I would agree. If there are no contractors out there willing to do the work, then we would need to hire them, because you're absolutely right that the work needs to be done. And I would agree with the coroner that his current staff are not able to do this type of work. So we need to have a solution. I would question, though, if we were currently paying for these costs under a contract, where is that contract money to offset the new FTE cost?
And also, we really don't have a job classification at this point.
Right.
There is really is not a job classification that meets the autopsy morgue operations technician. It does not exist in the county. So if the board approves this position, it's going to take time to create that position. So
Well,
to give you additional perspective.
At some point, I don't know all the logistics involved, but I think the need is there, and I'm inclined to support the coroner on this issue. And how we do that, I don't know. That's a different issue, but I do think there is a COVID connection. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, Ramiro, isn't it the case that, isn't your argument just more justification for, I mean, if it's going to take additional time, isn't that all the more reason, and there's an emergency component, isn't that all the more reason for the board to authorize it now instead of waiting for the fall? Because there's going to be a lag while we create the classification and get the person hired.
So if the board decides to agrees and supporting this, the final action doesn't take place until June 29. So logistically, it's going to take us 3-4 months to get create that classification. So if there is an immediate need, and if we have a contract, the contract for those services will continue on until at least in the fall.
We also, when we are developing an ensuing year budget and offices or departments are contemplating new positions that don't currently exist, that's part of the budget development process, is they work with HR to develop these new positions that come before the board for approval.
You're saying that the position, if authorized, should be offset by a reduction in a contract amount that we're currently paying?
We must be, yes, we were paying this gentleman who had to self-isolate and was no longer available. The coroner has money in his budget to pay that contract, or had money in his budget to pay the contract. And that money, if he's no longer going to contract for the services, should be used to offset the FTE that we create to perform the work.
I asked about that now that you're describing it more clearly, and I think the coroner's response was that there would be, but it's given the very unusual circumstances of this particular employee and what he did and on what basis, it's a pretty small amount, a very small amount.
So then I would have to ask why we need a full-time FTE.
I guess I'd comment on that, that the coroner cut a deal with a citizen that was qualified, that was doing a lot of good things for the citizens of Thurston County by doing it cheap.
Yep.
And he isn't able to do it cheap anymore because of COVID. So that's where it all comes back to COVID. So I would hope if this board decides to support the coroner, which I do, I think you figure it out and try to make it happen out of COVID money as much as possible.
Okay.
All right, great discussion.
Yep.
Ready to move to the next item?
Yes.
Okay, line 19 is the $2 million that the board has been talking about to establish the, whoops. Get rid of that. So this would establish the budget stabilization account. And it is, these are lines 19 and 20. It would be a transfer from the general fund to the new account that you would create. Line number 21 is a request from Public Defense to expand the Indigent Defense Investigator Services. There is, I can't tell, it looks like these are in response to standards that were in place for a number of years now.
They're requesting a new full-time FTE, an additional investigator.
Right, a new FTE.
Robin, real quick, I'm sorry, on items 19 and 20,
Mm-hmm.
didn't the board already adopt the resolution that establishes this?
Yes, and at the time you did, I let you know that in the budget amendment would be the appropriation authority
Yeah.
to actually make the transfer and establish the fund.
But wouldn't this be more of a technical or a, I mean, it doesn't really strike me as a policy decision. We already made the policy decision.
I would be happy to move this to technical if you think that's where it belongs, but I didn't want to be seen as hiding this anywhere.
Okay, just checking. I understood.
Continuing on in public defense, line 22, public defense is asking for additional funding for professional development.
Are these two requests fit within our parameters in any way?
I would say that they do not. Line number 23 is
Could I ask a question?
yes, sir.
And this, I might just run by our chair on a training budget for them. Is that, I mean, you were in that area, that activity. Are there enough changes going on that whether or not he should have had it in sync, I want to make sure we get it right. But when we're providing this service, I just wonder for what your perspective is, Chair.
I'll look more closely at this. I mean, I just on the surface, I'm not aware of a particular, you know, a great example that I always like to use is when the voters passed I-940 or whatever with created all new training requirements on our sheriff's office. I mean, obviously that's automatic. We fund that because it's a new, unanticipated response. I think training budgets across the county, from what I've heard, are low, and we've heard that. We increased the sheriff's one, I think, twice over in the last year and a half. I'm sure there's a need here, but I'm just struggling to figure out if it fits within our mid-cycle adjustment. And I'm just sitting here today, I'm not convinced that it does. If I see an avenue or think of an avenue, or I'll certainly bring it to the board's attention, but not sure at this point if there's anything that new that's occurred that would require us to make this adjustment mid-cycle.
So I would suggest to you that if you're going to open the budget up to add additional funding for training, that there are other offices and departments that would love an opportunity to apply for that.
I understand. We're not going to go down that road because that's true of every single type of thing. I mean, I think Commissioner Edwards was asking a good question, which is, for example, the Blake thing dropped like a bomb.
Right.
If there was, I think he was asking my professional opinion is there is something like that of such a different nature that additional training would be needed for our public defender to competently handle it?
Right.
I don't know that the answer to that is yes. Maybe it's a smaller amount if it's limited to that issue. I haven't, I mean, I think that anyway, I think it was a legitimate question. I just don't know that the answer is yes.
Right. I would agree that it was a good question. So line number 23 is central services. Central Services is requesting an increase of $156,000 from the ER&R fund. The money is in the fund, and the equipment that the board has authorized. We have to replace one piece of equipment early that has not lasted as long as we thought it would. And then some of the replacement costs are higher than what we thought they would be. So additional funding is necessary to replace the equipment that needs to be replaced.
I do have just a quick question on this.
Yep.
Equipment rental and replacement I'm just wondering what the revolving additions and under column title.
Right. So the
Is that a typo?
ER&R.
Is that a typo or something there?
No, Commissioner, this is the legal name of the fund.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
ER&R.
Well, I knew it was ER&R, but I thought it was replacement.
Nope.
Okay.
Can I ask,
Equipment rental and revolving fund.
it seems like in previous times you've separated general fund policy requests from others, and this is all kind of jumbled together. Is there a reason for that?
These are in the order of department.
Okay. No particular reason why you didn't separate out.
Time constraints, Commissioner.
Okay.
If we'd have had more days, we could have,
Just making sure.
yep, made prettier reports. So let's see. And Excel is jumping around on me. So I feel like I've missed a lot of lines now. Here we go. Line 24 is from Community Planning and Economic Development. It is a request for $13,000 to increase funding for the WSU extension. They are entering, or rather they're adjusting their interagency, if you will, agreement with the storm and surface water. So they have revenue here that would support the increase for WSU on line 24. On line 25 is the also from CPED to do a reallocation of their development services positions to align with the business needs. So you see that that's paired with line 26. It's in policy because it shifts money between funds. Otherwise, between them, it nets to zero. Line 27 is an item where CPED is requesting an increase in funding for the WSU contract, And you saw that in their presentation last week. And I would suggest to you that this is out of cycle. Line 28, also a request from CPED. This is a request for $100,000 for court-ordered cleanup of properties that are not in compliance with county code. The board is familiar with these two properties, and this would be a new policy for the county to pay for cleanup on property that we do not own.
Those are the two properties, the single tree estates and the LP Brown. We have an abatement order for the property owner to clean those properties, and that abatement order lapses in August of this year. So if the property owner doesn't clean that, then we have to go to court again. And I believe on the feedback they provided to the board earlier on this particular properties, then is the role of the county to clean their properties, running the risk that abatement will lapse. And that is the reason of this request.
Could I comment on that, sir?
Sure.
I think to continue on that, the intent was, even though we might have to expend taxpayers' dollars to do this particular job, for the community, I think a lien was supposed to be applied to recover any of our costs. It's just that we could not spend the money ahead of time without having something like this. But I think the intent of it is to recover costs through the lien at the future sale of the property.
Yeah, no, that's the intent. I mean, but the initial expenditure is here. So the recover will place a lien on those properties if that is the case. But we don't know when those properties will sell for us to be able to recover that money. But you're right. I mean, that is the next step.
So hopefully, I mean, if we let all this work expire, then we start all over again. If we enact this now, or, I mean, it's something that's certainly unanticipated.
But keep in mind that this will not resolve the issue.
It might not resolve it, but it'll sure help it.
No, I'm just giving the perspective because we do not own those properties. And if we do a cleanup, it's not going to prevent it from those property owners to continue to bring that. So even goes back to the Kaiser Road property, and I continue to use that 20-year long period. The county cleaned up that property using county road funds 2 times. It was not until after 20 years until we were able to recover those costs.
But they never did continue to seize the property under the proposal so they could sell it and recover. So we never did finish that whole, one of them went on for 20 years, if I remember right. And so we need to come up with a solution to help citizens that are in the neighborhood of these properties as much as anything. And this way we'll have a fund to do the cleanup, and we have a mechanism we can put a lien on the property and actually end up with the property if need be. And then the owner gets the residual amount left or something like that. He would get that back. The person would get it back, I guess.
So with this action, we will not get the property. We will not get the property because the property owns the property. So the county will not own their property through this action.
No, not through this action, but we could continue the action and go to court and end up with the property the same way we do under eminent domain.
Well, if that's a different discussion, if the board wants to exercise condemnation, that's different. That's a different conversation.
Well, it's all part and parcel of getting the lien against there and getting something done. Otherwise, we mess around with this for 20 years. The single tree estate has been almost 20 years. The one out on Kaiser, I think that's where it was. I think that one went on for over 20 years. So we ought to come up with a solution to fix these kind of community issues.
So my,
Sorry.
I apologize for interrupting, but we are at time, which is why I've stopped sharing my screen. And I just want to say we'll find additional time on the board's calendar to continue. So, and with that, I'm done.
Okay, Ramiro, I want to close up this item. So on the abatement order that you're saying lapses in August. So that order requires the property owner to clean the property.
That's correct.
But how is it that we're going to pay for that? We're going to give them, we're going to do it. We get to do it if they won't do it, or how does that work?
No, because there's no guarantee the property owner will do it.
Right, but so then at what point are we allowed to come in and do it ourselves?
If you approve, we can do it at any time. It's all about the
So
money.
the abatement order says the property owner or the county can or the property owner has to, and the county may
Yeah,
come in
that's
on
my
the
understanding.
private property and do a cleanup.
That's my understanding.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm kind of, yeah, I'm also kind of confused on this one. I mean, is there a possible way if we clean it up that we charge the property owners for it, try to get the money back or a percentage of the money back?
Well, the process is where Commissioner was stated, we put a lien on that property.
So there's going to be a lien on it, and then
And that's the guaranteed,
that's the guarantee that
yeah.
they'll pay us back, or the property might belong to the county.
If the county wants to step in and clean up, just to guarantee that that property is cleaned up before the abatement deadline lapses. That's really the request of, the reason of this request.
Because you're saying after August, we would not have the ability to go in and do the cleanup.
There will not be an abatement order.
The court order.
We would need to go back to court.
Yeah, we need to go back to court.
I might point out it took 20 years to get to court.
And Commissioner Mejia, there's a second type of legal process you can go through to
Yeah.
condemnation where the county takes the property over. But it's obviously because that's a bigger deal, it's a little more longer and expensive. The abatement's a little bit simpler and cheaper, but you have the problem Ramiro just explained where all that does is clean it up. And we can force the clean up if we want to pay for it, but then the property stays in the hands of the wrongdoing property owner. And if they want to just dirty it up again, then we're back to square one.
That's exactly what happened on the Kaiser Road.
Yeah.
We went in, the county cleaned up twice. And at that time, we spent close to $75,000, and the activities continue. It was not until that property owner lapsed on his property taxes that became a delinquent property, the county went in and surplused that.
So you're saying, this has gone on for so long, and I apologize for forgetting, but on LP Brown, I thought for that very reason we were shying away from abatement and leaning toward condemnation. But you're saying that there's an abatement order on LP Brown?
Yeah, no, we provided the options, and the board obviously did not take an action on condemning those properties. That's a very difficult process to go through on a condemnation. Because as you struggle on meeting the needs of the community to clean up a property, you also have to look at the property rights that an individual has on their property. So the county cannot just condemn without showing public use and necessity. But
Well,
that's a
LP
different
Brown,
conversation.
I understand that. LP Brown was a special case. I believe we had the foundation for that. It's a dangerous, burnt out building, like within feet of school. And I think the board's direction, if I remember, was if we could work out a long-term plan for that property with the school district, then we would have the appetite for the condemnation proceeding. And I thought those discussions were kind of ongoing.
Yeah, but I don't believe the school district has offered any money to clean up the property.
Okay, well, I guess we're out of time. It's 1:04. We're 4 minutes late for the next session. Let's take 6 minutes and reconvene at 1:10 for our next.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.